It's November in 2024. Trump was just elected. What does that mean for estate and gift tax planning? Hi, I'm John Strohmeyer with Strohmeyer Law, where we help our clients leave no unfinished business. While I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer, so make sure that you talk to your own advisors about your particular situation. Nothing in this video is going to be specific legal advice for you. Now, of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If we can answer your questions, we will do that. As I mentioned, Trump got elected, and now we've got to start thinking about what do we do for estate and gift tax planning. And you may remember for the last few years, we've been thinking and talking about what happens when the estate tax exemption goes down as scheduled in 2026. Now, here is a graph you're seeing right now. What you see is here we are here in 2024. We're at $13.61 million per person as the estate tax exemption. It's combined with the gift tax exemption. So to the extent that you make gifts during your lifetime, well, you're going to use up that exemption and it will not be there when you pass away. Next year, it's going to tick up for inflation. It's going to be $13.99 million. And then under current law, and unless something changes, January 1, 2026, that estate tax exemption is going to drop. And right now, we don't know the exact amount because it's based on inflation calculations. But again, it'll drop and it's going to be somewhere between $7 and probably $7.25 million per person. But what happens next? Is this actually going to come to pass? Well, who knows? To change that, we're going to need an act of Congress that's signed by the president. The expectation is the Senate is controlled by Republicans, the House is controlled by Republicans, and the White House is controlled by Republicans. They're probably going to extend the estate tax exemption. But they don't have total control. We assume there's going to be, or I assume there's going to at least be some sort of filibuster left in place. And will the Republicans have the ability to ram that particular piece of legislation through Congress? Probably, but is it going to be worth it to them to spend the political capital extending the estate tax exemption? I wouldn't, at this point, I've been telling clients for years, I've been telling everybody who's listening here, we've got to wait until we get past the election to know what we're going to do. If Biden had been elected, if there had been any Democratic control of either of the two houses in Congress, I would be more confident that we were going to see this exemption drop. At this point, I'm probably about 75% we're not going to see the exemption drop. There's 25% only in that they're going to have to get something through Congress, and they probably have other priorities right now in terms of what needs to get done. That said, I don't know. Nobody's telling me what their legislative priorities are. So this probably will get extended. My guess is it will be extended. We'll probably see some sort of continuation of these high exemption amounts. What do we do now? Well, it's not until we have an actual bill that's passed through Congress and signed by the president that this will change. Until then, what should you be doing if you're in this area, or if you're thinking about doing estate and gift tax planning? Well, let's think about it based on where your assets are. If you are single and your assets are under $6 million, or you're married and your assets are under $6 million, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're probably in the clear no matter what happens. So good news, there's no planning for you to deal with. If your assets are, we'll just say, way over 30 million or over, good news and bad news, nothing's changed. You're still going to be paying estate tax in some sort of fashion. Whether the exemptions drop or not, it doesn't change it. It just changes the amount of tax you're going to pay. It's now the folks who are between that 7 million and 20, 25, 30 million who are in limbo of what should be done. The lower you are on that scale, the way I'd start thinking through this is, well, if you're a single person between $6 and $14 million, you're hoping that the exemption gets extended because then it's going to cover up what you've got. There's not a whole lot as a single person you can do to change where your assets are going to be without making large gifts. If the drop doesn't happen, if the exemption gets extended, great news, you're already covered. If it does happen because the Republicans are forced or focused elsewhere, Well, then you're, anywhere from, depending on what your assets are at, you've got some assets over the line. We're going to want you to start thinking about, how do you protect your assets? Can you start making gifts now that are essentially tax-free? So that annual exclusion gift of $18,000 per person, $19,000 in 2025, medical and educational gifts, charitable gifts, are there ways for you to move things out now? If you start making taxable gifts, you're actually going to burn up the exemption that's left. So that may not be your best plan. Again, there'll be a choice for people on what they want to do. If you're married and between that, 7 million and 28 million, we're thinking about, well, how much can you give? Should you give something to your spouse? Should you give something to someone else? It's going to be a decision. Again, you use the exemption from the bottom up, and because you're using it from the bottom up, to take advantage of the bonus exemption, you're going to have to make a gift of at least $8 million. If you're going to have to make that big of a gift, the people who want to make $8 million gifts, they've got to be able to live on and continue their lifestyle after making that gift, which means not a lot of people who are in the 6 to 30 million range are interested in giving up that large of a portion of their assets just in the name of tax planning. Now, our priorities are not tax planning first. Tax planning comes third. We think about simplicity first. We want to be able to make sure that this works and that people understand why we've done it. After that, we have to account for reality. Now, we're putting wills and trusts and other things in place to account for the particulars of our lifestyle and our family and where they are. We want to make sure that that planning gets done what we need to be done. It'd be great if all we had to do was tell somebody, tell the magic bush exactly what needs to happen when we die. And as long as you keep that bush alive, it'll take care of things once you're gone. Our reality is you need to have a will or trust, some sort of written instructions that will make sure that things get to where you need them when you're gone. It's only after we've done those first two things that we can focus on the tax planning. And frankly, people will put the simplicity part, or will want to say, keeping my lifestyle is part of simplicity. Like, not radically altering my life is much simpler than giving away a bunch of my money to my kids, grandkids, because I may save a few dollars in tax. So to pull this all together, now that Trump has been elected and we've got Senate control for the Republicans and House control for the Republicans, what should you be thinking about? Well, if you weren't really worried about estate tax before because your assets were under 6 million, nothing's changed. If your assets are way over 30 million, if we're talking 30, 40 plus million dollars in assets for you, probably nothing's changed. If you're in the middle, your planning is going to depend on what happens in Congress in the next year. The mere election of Republicans to the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate doesn't change the forecasted enacted law that will show that, or will have the exemption drop to about $7 million per person in 2026. There will have to be a law. It'll have to make it through both houses before any of that changes. Once that changes, we'll know a little bit more about what needs to be done. But if you're in that middle zone for right now, things are looking up, like you won't have to pay, or that estate tax bill will be lower. But it still relies on Congress and the president doing something. So in the meantime, pay attention, keep your eye on your assets, and we'll be here for more questions. Thanks so much for watching.